Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get started here with our webinar. I'm just going to introduce our host for today, and then he'll take it away. So our speaker today is Jim Freeman. He is a founding partner of Freeman Kevenides law firm. He is a lawyer that advocates for bicycle safety and helping those involved in cyclist vehicular collision. Today, he'll be discussing how to recognize dangerous situations while cycling, how to avoid collisions, and then what to do if you end up in a collision. Kevenides is how you say the last part of the law firm. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi there. Let's see. My name is Jim Freeman. I am I'm an attorney. I advocate on behalf of vulnerable users, is what I say. I usually call these presentations legal cycling, but today it looks like we have a different title, which is fine. Let me see. So this is a law firm. We have our main office is in Chicago, and we also, I think I got licensed out here in 2014. We opened the Iowa office in 2016 and moved to our current location in 2016, which is 202 West Burlington, Fairfield. I've been living out in Fairfield full-time since November of 2016. We moved out here to basically to be around family and raise the kids. There we go. So here's me. I've been a lawyer for 20 years now. My history is that it's going to be a little choppy as I try to negotiate my devices here. There we go. My history is that I worked at a couple different law firms after I graduated from law school. I worked initially for a law firm that represented plaintiffs in personal injury cases, and then I worked for a law firm that represented defendants in personal injury cases. We worked for a couple larger insurance companies who were our major clients. Got about 4 years in at the big firm, and I went on vacation with my family and realized that all my nieces and nephews had basically grown up and I'd missed it, and that this was the rest of my life. It occurred to me at that point that I needed to make a change if I was going to enjoy my law career and my life. And so I came back from vacation, been growing a beard for about 3 weeks. The partner at the law firm says, well, what's up with the beard? And I basically said, I quit and I'm going to go start my own practice and try to develop my own caseload and book of business, and we'll see how it goes. My partner at the time, the partner that I worked for at the time, my mentor, says, well, in another year you'll make partner here. And yeah, I don't really think that's going to be exactly what I'm going to find satisfying in the long run. So I went ahead and quit, and I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. I was kind of at a loss. So I had been handling bicycle cases at the defense firm, when I left, I didn't really have the idea that I was going to be a bicycle attorney, or that I was going to have some concentration of practice with bicyclists. They always gave me the bicycle cases to handle because it was a novelty, and I was the guy that commuted by bicycle. But it wasn't a thing that at that point I saw as being my place. When I left, my mentor said to me, you know, you need to go get involved in your chamber of commerce. You need to start going to church. You need to do these other things to get involved in your community. I thought, wow, I don't know what to do. I don't do any of that stuff. But I'm going to go try my hand at my business and see what happens. So I ended up going into a buddy of mine's. One of my riding buddies owned a bike shop. And I went into his bike shop and I said, hey, do you need any help? Do you want a mechanic? And he said, well, aren't you a lawyer? And I said, yeah, I'm a lawyer, but I'm starting my own business and business is slow right now. So got some time on my hands and I would like to work at a bike shop. So he kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, okay. So he gave me a job as a bike mechanic, and about 2 months in, a friend of mine came through the door, and he had his arm in a cast and he had a mangled bike, and he wanted a estimate on the damage to his bike. So we talked about that. Then we started to talk about his arm, what happened, how it happened. Next thing you know, I had my first case that I generated myself. At that point, I started going around to the other bike shops in Chicago and kind of, you know, dropping off a case of PBR, talk to them, hand them some cards, tell them what I was doing. Everybody kind of knew me because I was in the racing scene at that time. But, you know, wanted to let them know that I was, you know, Lawyer Jim is still practicing law. I'm just doing other stuff, and I'd like to have bicycle cases. So to the extent that you know anybody who needs help, have them give me a call. So here we are now, 14 years later. 7 years ago, I partnered with Brendan Kevenides. We now have a staff of 2 associates. So we got 2 associate lawyers, 2 partners, and 2 paralegals. And at any given time, we have about somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 active cases. Of those cases, probably 95% of them are bicycle cases. We have a small minority of pedestrian cases, and then we have some other stuff that we've handled over the years, but it tends to be the statistical outliers. Most of the business that we get is bicyclists that have been hit by cars, and that's really what we want to do. So a lot of times, not a lot of times, but once in a while we get a call from somebody who's got some other matter, and I'm not going to say we don't ever take them, but most of the time we don't, because we just have this thing that we want to do, that we feel good about doing, that we're set up to do, and that we do very well. And we find that our clients on the bicycle cases, people who come from our client base, tend to be really good people to work for, and they're easily satisfied, they're reasonable. There's just all these good things that have come out of working for bicyclists. So we really enjoy it. I usually start out this presentation by saying bicycling is a safe way to get around. Last year, I stopped doing that. And it's not because I don't think that bicycling is a safe way to get around. It is because we are on the precipice of a time that may become dangerous for vulnerable road users. So my counterparts in other parts of the country lately have been talking a lot about cell phones and automated cars. I think everybody I talk to everywhere is astonished by what's happened with cell phone use when people are driving their cars. My children are 4 and 5 years old right now, and when I see it the most is when I go back to Chicago, which I haven't done since February now. But when I see it the most is when I'm in Chicago, and it's like every time I stop at a stoplight, every time I look at a car that's not moving, and a lot of cars that are moving, they're on their cell phones and they're not paying attention to what's going on around them. Every time we get a case now, without even thinking about it, it's built into the mechanism. We subpoenaed the cell phone records of the driver every single time, without exception, to see what was going on, see if they were on their cell phone, see what their data usage looked like. And it's a factor a lot. Probably enough to say about that. The real specter on the horizon right now is automated cars. And I don't admittedly know a lot about automated cars and how they work, but I do know that my counterparts and other people in the industry that I've talked to about this are very concerned about vulnerable road users interacting with automated cars over the next decade. And the reason is people think that automated cars are able to do things or are trustworthy to do things that they're really not up to yet. And I haven't seen this a lot in my practice yet, but it's coming. So I bring it up and I talk to people about it. If anybody has any news on this, I'd love to talk about it. But I tell you that this is the thing that my counterparts in other parts of the country are watching right now. Because as automated cars become more and more available, people just think they can turn them on and check out. And you see it with, if you look online, you'll see there are all sorts of videos how to override or how to get around devices that require you to have your hand on the wheel or require driver attention. And the fact of the matter is, the thing that automated cars are having a hard time dealing with is not seeing other cars. It's the vulnerable road users. So it's pedestrians and bicyclists. So I bring that up and I talk about it in the course of what I expect to see in the future and what's on the horizon. But not something that I have seen come into practice just yet. So usually I talk about typical bicycle and car collisions. Differences in the ones we see in ones we tend to see in urban areas versus the ones we tend to see in rural areas. So in urban areas, we see a lot of what we call the left cross, which we'll go over in a minute. We see a lot of doorings, the right hook. Hit and runs are more common in urban areas. And problems with bicyclists and automobiles negotiating traffic lights is common. Left cross, I call this the most popular way to strike a bicyclist. This is pretty much anywhere you are in the United States, urban area, rural area, no matter where you're at. This is about 1 out of 3 collisions between bicyclists and cars is a left cross. The idea is bicyclists and the car are approaching from opposite direction. Car makes a left turn into the path or the person of the bicyclist, and a collision ensues. We got the right hook. Right hook is where car and the bicyclist are traveling in the same direction. Car makes a right turn into the path or person of the bicyclist. This is often related to traffic lights or intersections. Happens in different ways. I always tell people when you're filtering up on the right-hand side of traffic, you have to be aware that there may be a right turner there who doesn't see you. So always be cognizant of that possibility. So in central Iowa, one of the big things that I've noticed that is specific to central Iowa is that I get a lot of calls about bike-on-bike trail collisions. So anybody who's ever been on one of the many beautiful trails in central Iowa on a nice summer day in July, you probably know what I'm talking about. You've probably seen some near misses or some actual collisions. We don't know how much this is happening because Iowa doesn't keep track of bicycle on bicycle collisions. I'll tell you, because I get the calls, it's happening a fair amount. The other thing we see on trails is right turning vehicles striking bicyclists at trail crossings. So be aware, anytime you're making a right, anytime you're crossing a street on a trail, and there's a situation where a driver's making a right turn, they're going to be looking to their left, and they're not going to be thinking about the trail. And that's where these problems arise. Majority of collisions are intersection related. The overwhelming majority of intersection related collisions happen within a few seconds of the change of lights. So what I tell people is when the light is changing, that's a dangerous situation. That's when you need to be very clued into what's going on around you and paying attention. The nasty collisions that we get that arise from a change in lights are when the driver is approaching a red light and anticipates getting a green, so they hit the light going 30 miles an hour, but there's a bicyclist that entered on a green that immediately turned to yellow, and they don't see him and they hit the bicyclist. The other situation is when the driver approaches a light that they see is about to turn red, and they hit the gas, and then they hit the red light going 60 miles an hour. So be cautious in those situations. I always show this video because I want to illustrate how complicated negotiating an intersection can be, and how things that are completely out of your control or anticipation can affect how you negotiate or dangers in an intersection. So notice this truck here that stopped at a red light. Traffic's going through here. Our bicyclist is going to come into view right here, and then she's going to go this way. You'll notice when she enters, it's green, yellow, red, and then she comes out. So it was a bad situation for the bicyclist to begin with, but watch right over here. So you can watch the light so you know when she's coming out. See, it's green. Yellow. Red. Not yet. There we go. Red. There she comes. Boom. I'll tell you honestly, this guy didn't really do much wrong. This is a tough case. The guy driving the car, or the guy driving the truck, he really couldn't see anything because the bicyclist entered on red right as it changed to red, and then the guy in the truck, his view is blocked by this box truck here. This is a tough situation. but I show this video because I want people to understand that there's a lot that can happen at an intersection during the change lanes. So you don't want to deal with that. Doorings. Doorings are interesting to me because they are so prevalent in urban areas. I haven't had a ton of dooring cases in Iowa yet, but literally in Chicago, it's 30% of our practice, it seems like. It still happens. The thing that I find a shame is that they're very preventable accidents. A person opens their when I negotiate. Your speaker's not working. Is my audio okay? It says my speaker's not working.
Yeah, we can still hear you just fine, Jim.
Okay, this must be some random thing. So the thing about doorings is all you got to do is stay out of the door zone. If you can't stay out of the door zone, what I do is I take my right hand and I just kind of brush it out as I go by, as if I'm going to catch that door in my hand. Well, I've had people say, well, what if that door opens in your hand? You know what? It opens in my hand, I slam it shut right in their face. Never had a problem with it. Never been knocked over by a door, but I have caught 3 of them and I slammed them right in their face. And it's always a rewarding thing to do for me. The other thing I say is looked into the mirror of parked cars. So you're looking in their side view mirrors, or you're looking into just to see if you can see anybody in case the windows are tinted. I'll tell you, even if you do all this stuff and you ride in the door zone, you still are taking a chance. I had a situation, I've had more than one situation where a driver there was one where the driver was messing around with something in the floorboards. They were picking up something they dropped, and then they sat up and kicked the door open and doored a bicyclist. And the bicyclist told me flat out, I was looking in cars as I was going by. I couldn't believe it happened. So be cognizant of doors if you got to ride in the door zone. So rural collisions. Again, the most common rural collision is the left cross. Another common thing that happens is issues with an overtaking vehicle in some way. So this involves either somebody isn't paying attention, or they're just passing too close. Sometimes it's the truck with the horse trailer, and he just pulls into the driver just pulls into the lane, pulls back into the lane before they should. The intentional acts and the hit and runs in rural situations, in my opinion, are a little creepy. They don't happen as much as in urban areas, but as everybody knows, stuff happens. One of the big things that I suggest is be wary of riding into the sun. I went for a ride with a buddy of mine in Cedar Rapids a couple of years ago, and I always love going other places and going with rides with locals because they take you on the great rides that are in the area. And this guy had a route all planned out for us, and I'm not going to lie, it was a beautiful ride. It was a great day, but there was one stretch of it where we went up and we made a left turn and we were going to be riding right into the sun. And I looked at him and I said, don't you know who you're rolling with right now, brother? We're not making this turn. And he says, oh, it's just a little ways. And he talked me into it, but it was not something I took lightly. And to be honest, I think bike clubs, people riding bikes, they should take this into consideration always. And it varies given the time of year, the time of sunset. But if you ever find yourself riding into the sun, you recognize that whoever is behind you, whoever's getting ready to pass you, they can't see you very well. What I say about this down at the bottom here is, I'm being honest, because it's bad for business. Here's my thing. Somebody comes to me with a case and they say, oh, I was hit by a driver. He couldn't see me because the sun was in his eyes. You know what? I'll take that case every day. I'll blow that case out. That case is a dream. But I don't want them. And we can do without them. And they're easy to avoid. Just don't ride into the sun if you can possibly avoid it. So dogs. I like this guy here. I think he's getting ready to cream me. This guy just doesn't care. Everybody knows dogs are a hazard in rural areas. So people ask me about this enough in Iowa that I included in my presentations. I talk about the chronicles of the infamous dog from Fort Dodge and how it came to be pepper sprayed. I'm going to tell you right now, 2 years ago, I want to say 8, 10 people approach me at different times and talk to me about this one dog outside of Fort Dodge. And apparently it was a county supervisor or somebody owned it, and it was located on this beautiful riding route, and it was a problem for everybody. Finally, somebody pepper sprayed the dog, and that created some issues for the owner, who then apparently took some action. I haven't heard anything about that dog in a couple of years, but I offer these alternatives. Spray Shield Animal Deterrent Spray. This is what my dog trainer likes. She feels like it's very humane. I've been also told to dismount and use bike as a barrier. That's not something I'm going to do. I'm more likely to yell at them, or I like the idea of throwing something at the dog to let it tear up and then take off, which I have done. My buddy Greg Titus, you can Google the Dog Popper Guide. He uses these little devices that he makes at home. They're wax coated, like 4th of July popper things that you throw down and they explode. And he says they work great. He just he tapes a couple of them to his handlebars, replaces them a couple times a year if he doesn't use them. And anytime a dog runs up or he's got an issue with the dog, he throws one of those out and then blam, and the dog takes off. I added this year. I'd like people to know that we handle infrastructure and construction related cases and what those types of crashes look like. They tend to be the minority of situations, and I guess the reason that I historically have not really talked about them in my safety lectures is because trying to relate. I've got a buddy who works for UPS. He makes safety videos and he sends them to me, and they're really funny. But one of the best ones that he sent me, which was serious, was how to avoid stationary objects. And I feel like infrastructure and construction related crashes are kind of along those lines, because the idea is generally these are things that you can see and avoid. Once in a while, not so well, but generally when I see these cases, there is a defense lodged that I have to deal with of open and obvious. It's open and obvious, sometimes notice defenses. But here, I show you this one. you can see these two plates, and you can't see it real well now. But if we look at this picture, here you can see there's a problem with those plates. Nice and safe for cars, bicyclists, not so much. Now, in this case, it turned out that a private contractor had put these plates down like this, and we were able to effectuate a recovery for the client whose wheel went into that slit right there. This is one of my favorite infrastructure cases. And this one happened to be on my morning commute. I didn't hit this, but one of my clients did. And as soon as he called and started telling me about the pothole, he said, it's got a floor mat in it. I knew exactly which one. I knew exactly where it was located. Turns out it's not a floor mat. It's a mud flap from a truck. And we found the truck and we found the contractor, and it was off of a truck that, believe it or not, laid that pavement right there. And so they had an issue with that. I like this one here too. Now you see that hole right in that bike lane? That's an issue. Here you can see it next to a quarter. That gives us some perspective of size. It's not real big, but it's a sinkhole. It's super deep. Now what's that? What is that? That is somebody's red spray paint. Now it turns out the municipality came out and sprayed that hole to mark it so that they could come back and fix it. And you know what? They didn't do it. So that one we were able to effectuate a recovery on as well. Nice thing about that marking is it showed notice, it showed they knew about it. So we talked about the situations you should watch out for. So Jim, how do I avoid collisions? The easiest way to avoid collisions is to be seen. And this is this idea of conspicuity. If you are conspicuous, that is the best thing you can do to avoid being struck by an automobile, generally. I say be aware, make eye contact with drivers, assume drivers don't see you, ride predictably, all this stuff. Pass on the left, not on the right. When you're overtaking cars, you're generally supposed to pass on the left, not on the right. I get it. Everybody filters up on the right-hand side. I'll deal with that situation if it comes up. Crosswalks and sidewalks, you got to understand. If you're riding your bike, even if it's legal, if you're riding your bike on a crosswalk or on a sidewalk that is not a trail crossing, you are operating your bicycle in a spot where drivers just don't expect a bicyclist to be. You have to be extra cautious. I'm not saying there's nothing I can do in those situations. I'm just telling you, this is a dangerous one. Watch out for it. And it's true. We get a lot of cases where bicyclists are struck in crosswalks, especially if there's a building right there, blocking the view of the driver. So the bicyclist comes out from behind the building, rides across the crosswalk. They got a right turner driver that strikes them. It's a tough situation and just easily avoidable if you use a little common sense. This stuff comes up in weird places too. This is an excerpt from an ambulance report in which the EMT took it upon himself to note that the victim is dressed head to toe in black clothing with no working lights on his bicycle. So best, please use white headlight, red rear reflector. That brings us to headlight laws. I always try to give my perspective on headlight and helmet laws, which is the next 2 slides here, because I just want people to understand there's more than one way to look at these things. My experience with headlight laws, usually when I give these legal cycling presentations to a group, I'll say, hey, I'll start out like this. Who knows someone who's ever had a ticket for not having a headlight? One time, maybe twice, and I've done these a lot. Maybe twice, I had somebody say, I think I had a friend who said they got a ticket. Maybe one time somebody said, I think I know somebody who got a warning. All right, well, that doesn't count either. So what do I take from this? Well, I take from this that we don't really have a concern about getting tickets for riding our bikes without headlights. Well, then what's the problem, Jim? Where does this come into play? What's the big deal? If we're not going to get tickets for it, who cares? Well, the issue arises because if you don't have a headlight and an otherwise negligent driver strikes you, regardless of what the lighting conditions are, they're going to bring up the fact that you didn't have a headlight, and they're going to assert it as an affirmative defense. And a statutory violation, meaning you didn't have a headlight and it was required by statute, that's considered evidence of negligence per se, meaning just on its face, you're negligent, regardless of what the other situations are. Now, that doesn't mean that you're barred from recovery, but it's a problem. And it reduces the value of the claim usually, at the very least, if it doesn't bar your recovery, which it could. Never seen it happen in one of my cases, but it could. So we got a headlight law in the books. It is not enforced. Nobody needs to worry about getting a ticket for a headlight. But when a negligent driver strikes a bicyclist, they can use it as an affirmative defense. Whoa, that's not good for us. That's bad for us. That's true. Now let's look at the next one. Helmet laws. So first and foremost, I say always wear a helmet. Always, always, always. I don't even go around the block without a helmet. If my family goes for a bike ride and I forgot my helmet, guess what? I'm not going. So I always wear a helmet, and that's how I feel about it. And I think everybody should always wear a helmet. Having said that, I don't want a helmet law. You know why I don't want a helmet law? Same reason I don't like the headlight law. I don't think anybody's going to enforce it. When's it going to be used? Well, it's going to be used when a motorist strikes a bicyclist and the bicyclist sustains a head injury and the motorist wants to assert this as an affirmative defense. Yeah, I did it, but he should have been wearing a helmet. There's a statutory violation because he didn't have a helmet on. That's a problem. So I say everybody should wear helmets. We don't need laws to legislate that. Anybody tries to tell you that, oh, we're going to pass this high visibility law, we're going to pass this helmet law, we're going to pass this headlight law, and it's only for the safety of bicyclists. Nah, there's other issues afoot there. So just be aware of that. So let's say the worst case scenario comes to pass. You're in a collision. What do? I always tell people, first and foremost, you got to keep your cool. And this is coming from a guy who is a mixed martial arts practitioner and has always felt like I've had more testosterone than your average bear. Having said that, when I get hit by a car, I remind myself, you got to, as mad as you are, you got to chill out right now and treat this as an unexpected business transaction, is how I treat them. So first things first, call the police, get the witness information. Don't depend on the police to do that. you may live somewhere where the police do a very good job and they always write down everything and they document everything and they do everything right. That's fine. I'm going to tell you, without disparaging our law enforcement officers, I just see case after case where a client comes in and they say to me, "Oh, we got all the information. It's in the police report." And then I get the police report and it's not there. So best case is if you're capable, get the witness and driver information yourself. I always tell people, make sure you get medical attention. Take pictures. Taking pictures is a manner of preserving evidence. Remember your camera phone. Yeah, this is in here because I've been doing these for a long time. Of course, now I don't even have to tell anybody that. But let's take a look at some pictures that I've gotten over the years. This is a good one taken with a camera phone. This was a dooring. I show this one because this was the guy who got doored is not in the picture. The bicyclist there was just a guy who rolled up on the scene after the fact. The guy on the cell phone there, that's the doorer. And you notice that the door is open. That's because when this guy opened the door in the position the car is currently located, which is in the middle of the street, he doored a bicyclist who bent that door back. So that door won't close now. I show this picture because, but for this picture, we would have lost this case. Their defense was their driver pulled to the curb. It just so happened that somebody came by and took this picture that documented the position of the vehicle with the door open. And because of that, we were able to effectuate a recovery for this client. I show this one. I like this one. This one came from an old flip phone 15 years ago. And this is the defendant being led away in handcuffs after he brake checked a whole racing team out in a pace line on a country road. Never would have been admitted to evidence, but I like the picture a lot. So I always tell people physical contact is not necessary. If there are multiple cars involved, get everybody's information. That's true with taxi or rideshare passengers and doorings. When I go to Des Moines, I use Lyft when I'm in Des Moines. So I don't know how many other places they have rideshare in Iowa. I know they have it in Des Moines. So it's used a lot, or it was used a lot before COVID. I don't know what the situation is now, but I presume that people are still using rideshare. If you get struck by a rideshare driver, it's a complicated situation, I'll tell you that. Uber and Lyft, the main rideshare companies, generally appear to be requiring what would I say about it? I would describe their technique of litigation as try to settle the cases early or scorched earth. But they are unique to litigate against, I will say that. Make sure you get everybody's information. If you get doored by a passenger on a ride share, you want the passenger's information and you want the driver's. So when you go to the hospital, make sure you tell them about everything you're experiencing. If you've just got one big thing and all they write down is, well, he's got a cut on his arm, and you end up with a a blown out knee that you didn't tell them about, that's going to be an issue. So tell them everything you're experiencing. Make sure you actually get treatment too if you need it. I tell people, if you have your own health insurance, make sure you put your bills through your own health insurance rather than letting somebody say to you, oh, just put them through the driver's insurance. There's a number of reasons for this, which I'd be glad to discuss, but suffice to say, the best case scenario is that you put your bills through your health insurance and then we go and deal with the driver's insurance separately. Understand that your health insurance has a right of subrogation if you make a claim against the driver or the driver's insurance company. So what I mean by that is you can't just make the claim for your out-of-pocket expenses. So my health insurance paid XYZ, so I'm not claiming that. No, that doesn't work, because when you settle with the driver, your health insurance can come back to you and say, okay, where's our cut? Oh, well, I didn't count you guys into it. Then you got an issue because you owe your health insurance company money once you make a claim against the driver. If you don't make the claim, you don't have to pay them back. But if you make the claim against the driver, you got to cut them into it. One of the reasons I say, if you end up with an injury where you need medical treatment, if not me, you should have some lawyer helping you out with that. If you just have property damage, just damage to your bicycle, I usually tell people it's okay if you handle that yourself, and then I kind of walk them through the process. You want to take pictures of the bike, make sure you get pictures that show the damage, and then I like pictures of the bike as whole. One from the drivetrain side, one from the non-drivetrain side, just to show all the parts, because a lot of times we customize our bikes and it's not just the bike you bought off the shelf at the shop. Go get a shop estimate. I put in here, tell them to be honest. You know, it's odd. I've had different situations with different shops, but I've had a lot of experience with shops trying to inflate a property damage claim for their customer. My experience is, once the insurance company gets an inflated property damage claim and they realize that something's going on, everything gets way more difficult. So I tell people not to do that. Having said that, I know it happens and I know people get away with it. I tell people not to do that. My attitude is, I just want to be honest in the way I practice law and the way I conduct myself. And so if I'm out of pocket $5, I'm going to make my claim for $5. I want my $5 back. Besides property damage, this is not really a place where the opportunity to make money exists, or to make value out of a claim. It just doesn't really exist with property damage claim. If you got to make a decision whether or not to fix or preserve your bike. If your bike can be fixed and you pay to have it fixed, that makes everything easy. Whatever you pay to have it fixed, that's your property damage claim. If your bike is totaled, then you're entitled to the reasonable market value of the bike right before it was damaged, or the cost of repair. So whichever is less. If it turns out the cost of repair is more than the market value of the bicycle, then you want to preserve the bike. Don't part it out. The bike is evidence. Wait until the property damage claim is settled. Once the property damage claim is settled, then you can part it out and do whatever you want. My experience is that some insurance companies tend to deny property damage claims in bicycle cases because they're small, and they think to themselves, what are you going to do? You're going to sue me over $1,200? And they're like, rubber stamp, denied. And then, you know, what's your recourse? What are you going to do? You're going to go sue us? Well, that's what your recourse is. Take them to small claims court is my suggestion. If you need help doing that, you can call me up. I'll kind of walk you through the process. Tell people your homeowners or renters coverage can have a rider or may just itself cover your bicycle. My experience is they tend to have an auto exemption. So if you're struck by a car, it doesn't do a lot of good. But if your bicycle is stolen, it'll help you out. So, had my collision. Now I'm worried about communicating with the driver's insurance. I always tell people, you don't need to be in a big hurry to call the driver's insurance company. A lot of people think, well, I need to call and report my claim. Well, the driver has a responsibility to do that theoretically, but you don't have that responsibility because you don't have any contract with that company. So you can just sit back. Generally, the statute of limitations for a personal injury case in the state of Iowa is 2 years. Now, there are exceptions to that. So if you have a situation, you want to call a lawyer and talk to them about your statute of limitations. That's not advice I can give right here, right now, for sure. But the idea is you generally have a little bit of time. So there's no hurry to call up the insurance company when you're lying in your hospital bed. The other thing is, what are you going to talk about? You're going to tell the insurance company, oh, well, you're going to pay for my medical and you're going to do this. What do you think they're going to say? Oh, yeah, we'll do that. No, they want to know how much they're going to get there. They're going to have to pay. You want to know what the value of your claim is. If you're lying in a hospital bed, you don't know any of that stuff because that all stuff is all in the future. Once you recover and I can go around and collect your medical, I am clairvoyant about the value of a case. But even me, when the case comes in, the insurance adjuster calls me up. We just don't have a lot to talk about because I don't know what the situation is yet. So what if the insurance calls you? Well, oh, not yet. What if the insurance company calls you? Well, if they call you, they may want to take a recorded statement. And if they're a competent insurance company and the adjuster's competent, the adjuster's doing a good job for the insurance company, he's going to ask to take a record, or she's going to ask to take a recorded statement. I can't give you advice what to do unless I represent you, which I don't right now. But I will say this. I have never, in my 20 years of practice in law, once seen a situation where a recorded statement has helped a person out. Never once have I seen that situation. I have seen time and time and time again where a recorded statement has been pulled out by a defense attorney and used to pull out inconsistencies in my client's testimony or a litigant's testimony to make it look like they're lying or to undermine their credibility. So you make your own decision how you deal with it. I will tell you, you don't have to give the recorded statement in order for them to consider your claim. I will tell you this too. The case is always better when it comes to the lawyer before the client has talked to the insurance company. Because the client doesn't know what they're doing. When they talk to the insurance company, mess everything up. Not everything, but they do mess stuff up, and it's always better if it comes to me without that. So I know it's Iowa. People out here, a little different than people in Chicago when it comes to litigation. I tend to get calls from people and they say, you know, I live in this small town. The person who hit me lives down the road. I don't really want to sue him. I understand that. People in Iowa, especially rural Iowa, are not litigious and don't want to be litigious. And I appreciate that. I'll tell you right now, every case that comes through my door, you know what I try to do? I try to settle it without filing the lawsuit because the client gets the money faster. Everybody gets a result that they don't have to deal with litigation, and everybody's happy. Every time I've had to put a case in suit and actually try the case. So if I've got 200 cases, maybe half of those go into suit, maybe a little less than half. The ones that go into suit, the ones that make it to trial, maybe it's like to 3%. Very small percentage of cases that come through my front door actually make it to trial. Of the ones that do, it's a dirty process. It really is. It's no fun for anybody. Nobody feels like they've been vindicated at the end of it. It just feels like just an awful experience. So I always feel like the best thing I can do for the client when they come through the door is to try to just prepare for the worst case scenario, always, always, always. But if we can sit down and settle things amicably without the need to litigate, it's in everybody's interest, is my experience. So let's look at some fun stuff for just a minute. So got some dumb denials straight from the horse's mouth. These are from insurance companies. No lie, no lie. Let's see. American Access. Mr. Freeman, we got your specialist list. We understand your demand. This is a right hook, is what this collision was. And what they say is, our insured was stopped on cart with his right turn signal activated. Well, I don't know why he stopped in the middle of traffic with his right turn activated and didn't turn, but that's what they say. While our insured was stopped, your client drove up to our vehicle at a high rate of speed and struck the passenger side. So your claim is denied. That one we had to file. Travelers, oh, Mr. Freeman, we know our driver doored your client, but the box truck door was ajar for almost a minute before your client was aware and did not react to avoid a collision. Good thing we had an independent witness on this one. We did have to file it, but we got a good result on it. Here we got universal casualty. What'd they say to us about their dooring? Our insured reported his car was parked when you ran your bicycle into his parked car. Accordingly, your claim is denied. They paid us on this one too. Here we got a certified statement of disposition. What this is a guilty plea. So the driver was charged with negligent driving. That's a bad charge to be charged with. And they pled guilty to this charge. This was on a left cross. You would think in that situation that this insurance company is just going to turn around and pay me, right? What they say is a bicyclist has a greater duty to maintain a proper lookout and retain control of their bicycle, as they have a greater risk of harm. I don't know what that means, but they paid us on that one eventually too. They actually did me a favor, to be honest, making me file that, which happens. So common injuries in bicycles, injuries to joints, things we fall on. Head injuries are a big thing. I tell people, if you have a head injury, especially one associated with memory loss, call a lawyer, get a lawyer on board, let them start an investigation, get an independent investigation started before you talk to the insurance company. Because once they know you don't remember anything, they know that it just happened. However, our insured says it happened. And things kind of go down the tube. So it's a good idea in that instance to talk to a lawyer. I always tell people, helmets, they're good. I wear them. Everybody should wear a helmet. But if the car is going fast enough, that helmet, it tends to not do as much good. My experience is that the faster the car is going, the more likely that you're going to have catastrophic injuries arise from the collision. Not so much the mass of the vehicle. Of course, if it rolls over you, that's one thing, but generally speed is the big factor that is a concern. So when you're on those roads with highway speeds, that's when we really see the bad collisions. Most of the time, if people are hit in the city where the speed limit's 30 miles an hour, it's a bump, it's a trip to the emergency room. Most of the time, it's just not that bad. So, you know, be aware of it if you're riding on high-speed roads. Hit and runs. I love a good hit and run case. It's nothing more rewarding to me than sitting a slimy hit and run defendant down across the table from me and spending an afternoon talking to them about their slimy deed and why they thought they could do this slimy thing and how slimy it was. And oh man, it makes me sleep good at night doing that. I always tell people, if the driver gets away, just give me a call. Let's talk about it. Sometimes, even if the driver gets away, if you've got an auto policy, I can effectuate a recovery under your auto policy, believe it or not. And it's a claim, so it's a no-fault claim. Just call me. Let's talk about it. I really like the hit and runs, and we do a good job on them. Here's one I like to show, just to show how we found a hit and run driver. And this is an odd hit and run because this driver was chased off by the police, or this driver, the bicyclist, was chased off by police. So let's watch it. I edited this myself, by the way. We got security video that shows this. You see that white car? Boom. Now what happened was the cops responded. Cops chased the bicyclist off. Cop says, "You can go now, no problems." High five. So we couldn't figure out who this was. So I put this video out. This video actually went a little viral, made the news that night. And next thing you know, we started getting phone calls. We found out exactly who this person was. Somebody called us, told us who the cop was, what her badge number was, what equipment she was wearing that would document the conversation she had with our client. And we got all the information we needed out of this one video that just happened to, that I edited one afternoon myself, and then that kind of went viral. Coverage, we talked about this. Always understand, even if the driver doesn't have insurance, if you own a car, you've got your uninsured motorist coverage, it's activated. Then I say, get involved. Iowa Bicycle's good. Iowa Bicycle Coalition's good to get involved with. Got the Des Moines Bicycle Collective. I guess you're now the Street Collective. Other local bike clubs. So that's my spiel. I guess we'll open it up now for some questions. And I haven't looked at the questions yet, so let's take a look. Scott Sumter says, what about e-bikes on trails? E-bike user striking a human-powered bicycle or pedestrian. Does the powered bicycle change anything? Not from my perspective. Does it give me arguments about whether or not they should be operating on trails? Maybe. I don't think it's a situation where it changes much, to be honest, from my perspective. It's going to be a question about who is doing a thing wrong, and you know, kind of making that analysis from there, and then looking for insurance coverage. With the new, so Nicholas asks, with the new Ingersoll design increasing the likelihood of right crosses and left crosses due to obstructed visibility, are there any avenues to hold the designers and advocates accountable? This is a this is a location specific question. I'm going to tell you honestly, these are tough cases. And when I see these, it makes me shake my head because generally it's very difficult to hold a municipality accountable for the way they design their streets. I generally have not had much luck doing that. And I know there's that situation, there's a couple others in the state where you would think somebody would be able to come in and deal with that question, but my experience is it's very difficult. Yeah, you can, Bethany, you can share screenshots online. Nicholas asks, Iowa is a stand your ground state. Can I protect myself from threatening drivers while riding? I like the concealed carry questions on bicycles, and have thought I should do a couple blogs on this topic. I think that's probably a bad idea if you're riding. I think if you stopped and somebody tried to run you down, it's probably action you could justify to take under that circumstance, but just my opinion is it's not a good way to handle most situations. So I don't give you legal advice on the topic, but I tell you that it's not how I would generally handle situations like that. I think the nice thing about drivers is you can always pull a plate, call a cop. If you have somebody who's threatening you with your vehicle that you have to flee from, my first line of defense is to flee, to be honest, rather than to stand my ground and deal with those issues. So Brad has a question. If crossing an intersection while on a bike path next to the street and the crosswalk sign is not walk because the button was never pressed, and if you get right hooked, is the cyclist at fault or the car for not yielding, even though the crosswalk sign said stop? In other words, should the cyclist stop through a cycle of lights to get the walk sign, or are we okay to go when the light is green? Well, it's kind of a tough situation because you're using pedestrian infrastructure or you're on a bike path. Yeah, technically you're supposed to stop. I don't like these actuated crosswalks that they use. They have one here in Fairfield, and they have a few of them here in Fairfield, and I hate them to begin with. Now during COVID, I'm like, who's going to touch that thing? Who wants to touch that thing? Nobody's touching that thing now. What, I'm going to go push this button? No, I'm just going to wait for the light to change across the street. I think it's a dumb way to design intersections. You know, people are crossing the intersection. Why not just build it into the timing of the light? Having said that, even in that situation, I feel like if you're using pedestrian infrastructure, you want to comply with the crossing signals generally. So I'm not going to tell you I wait for a change of cycle of lights. I'm just real careful. But if you get hit by that right turner, they're going to assert that you had a don't walk sign as a defense. They're going to try that. It gives them a thing to talk about, and it's not good. So I say, don't do it. If you do it, you got to be real careful. Always watch out for the right turners on the trails. It's just a real dangerous situation. And Bethany asks, are student drivers taught about bikes? You know, I don't know what the specifics are about what they learn in driver's ed. I know that Mark Wyatt had some more stuff that he wanted to get added to driver's education about bicycles. That has not been my focus, so admittedly, I'm not real prepared to answer that question. So I would refer you to Mark Wyatt at the Iowa Bicycle Coalition. But I know they're working on getting more stuff added to the driver education courses and licensing requirements, I guess. Then Nick says, if a car stops in the protected bike lane and I have to make an emergency stop, but hit the car despite my best efforts, am I at fault? Well, the issue, everybody wants a black and white answer, and I appreciate that. The problem is not much is black and white, especially with bicycles and cars. The situation you're describing, Nicholas, is a situation where a bicyclist basically rear ends a car. And that sort of a situation, if you think about it with a bicyclist and a car, if you think about it as two cars, and one car stops and the other car rear ends the car that stopped, same fault, that's always a tough situation. Having said that, in theory, if a car suddenly stops in front of you, and despite your best efforts, you try to avoid it, you are technically not at fault. Does that mean that you're going to call me up and you're going to get me on the phone and we're going to go effectuate a recovery in that situation? It's tough. It's tough. But I understand the question. So I tell you that in theory, it's not your fault if somebody stops suddenly in front of you, but it's always going to be a tough case. So, got other questions? Well, I think that's it. So let me give you my, are we done?
Yeah. Did you have a closing? You wanted to give out your contact information?
Yeah, I was going to give out my, let me share my screen one more time, if you will. Here's my contact information. We're actually working on our website, which is not live yet. It's going to be, I got a meeting with the web designer Thursday. It is going to be up real soon. We had to revamp it because we were using a different website and blah, 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 blah. So we're down right now, but I'm always open to talk to people about their situations and their cases. And I'm not a big sales guy. I don't have to be, so it's a really nice situation. So if you ever have an instance where you have an interaction with an automobile and you want to talk about it, just give me a call and we'll talk about it. And I'm always fine to do that. So as an outro, I do have an outro to read here. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all leave this event more informed about cyclist safety and know what to do if you or someone you know is involved in a cyclist collision. This has been recorded and will be posted on the Street Collective YouTube channel. Please be alert for a useful resource on this topic that will be sent to all attendees via email. Enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you very much. If anybody has questions, you can always give me a call. I appreciate your time. And thanks to the Street Collective for setting all this up. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We appreciate you, Jim, for giving this presentation. We will see everyone later.